Hello again, and welcome along to Factory Talk. Now, this week we are joined by what is no doubt about it an industrial giant with a global workforce in excess of 1/3 of a million and offices around the world. Siemens is one of the great companies of the 21st century, and in the UK, the CEO of Siemens Mobility is Will Wilson. I'm delighted to say he's our guest on the program this week. Will, thank you very much for being on Factory Talk. Before we talk about Siemens, let's find out a bit about yourself and your route to your current role within the company.
Okay, well, I've had quite a long career in transportation with a variety of companies. After I left the army many years ago, I went into an international role which led to the overhaul of jet engines. From there, I thought I'd take a career hop 21 years ago into rail. Didn't really like trains or anything else like that, and I've been there ever since. So my specialisms have been around railways, about integrated traffic solutions, about the management of traffic. And I've worked through three international companies and was actually acquired by Siemens in 2013 and have been the CEO for about just under 2 years now.
Now, Siemens, as I mentioned, it's a huge global brand. Just begin then by telling us a bit about Siemens in 2021, your products, your markets, your customers, and your employees.
Okay, so in 2021, we are, as you say, a very large company, but we're split up into a number of businesses. Some of those are in the core, as we call it, which is our Siemens Industry, Siemens Digital Industry, and our mobility business. So mobility is all about transportation. And then we have obviously our financial services. We have our health and ears, which is jointly owned between Siemens and other investors. And that deals with all the health equipment that you often find in hospitals, very prevalent here in the UK. We have our energy business, which many will have heard was, as we say, spun off. We have private investors coming into our energy businesses in the last 12 months. Very successful, really focused on decarbonisation as well as energy production. And we have a variety of smaller businesses across the industrial core. But our focus very much is around digital solutions and how we can drive productivity forward for our customers.
Right. We'll come on to talk more about the company in a moment. But one of the things I'm particularly interested in on Factory Talk, we talked to a lot of SMEs over the weeks, and we hear how they've been dealing with COVID over the 12 months. But huge global organisations such as yourself, how have you managed to deal with it?
Here in the UK, if I take our mobility business, we're not as huge as the whole of Siemens, but we're still responsible for just under 6,000 employees. And we've had a mixture of, 2,500 of those employees that have had to continue to go to work. We maintain 1/3 of the trains in the UK. We have two very large factories and a number of smaller factories around the UK. And we also have to keep um, our customers moving. So we've been doing a lot of infrastructure works with Network Rail and so forth. And then, of course, the remainder, the other 3,500, have actually had to work remotely. And this has caused many problems. And in some respects, it's no different to SMEs. We've had to make sure that our workforce are happy to come in, and it's been one-to-one relationships. We've had to make sure that we have the PPE that's possible to make the workspace a safe environment. And of course, we've had to make sure that our customers are happy with what we're doing and that we're fulfilling our contracts. And in that fact, we work really closely with our supply chain from, bringing actually one catering company in Northampton out of liquidation by giving an order through to making sure that we can still get our PCBs coming in from India and indeed our supply chain from China. So it's been complex. We have a lot more resources, I guess.
What about let's concentrate on the trains that you're building then at the moment. Have you had to incorporate any COVID safety features into them looking forward? Or is it just a case of hopefully within 12 months, 18 months, COVID will be behind us and the train design doesn't need to reflect that?
The train design takes upwards of 5 to 6 years to bring to fruition. And our biggest contract at the moment is replacement tube trains for the Piccadilly line. Here, I've got certain measures built in which will help COVID, particularly air circulation. We have air cooling there, but also wider doors, which means that the flow of people in and out and the subsequent air changes is greater than you'll see in the current stock. There are certain modifications that could be done to trains today, but as ridership is sitting at about 3 to 4% of the capacity of the train with people sitting down on it, it's not a huge issue. The issue is around actually getting people, the passengers on the train, to actually follow the rules with segmentation, and also, of course, wearing the PPE, well, the personal masks, as well as trying to not touch as many surfaces as possible and using hand cleanser or washing their hands as necessary. So working with the train operator companies and as well the government, it's all about confidence. But I don't think the train is necessarily the real risk that some people perceive it to be.
Now, we hear talk all the time about the golden now age of railways, steam, etc. But if you look at the situation now with HS2, record passenger numbers, certainly pre-pandemic, do you think we are perhaps in the second golden age of railways now, Will?
I think we are. In some respects, we're moving into a digital railway age. What we've seen over the last 20 years is a huge focus on reliability. But then in the last 10 years, we've seen a huge focus on capacity. Things like central London or central Birmingham, everything in the infrastructure has been upgraded. The passengers don't really know that there are far more trains going over the same bits of railway that there ever were, that was ever possible, in fact, in the past. And this means that actually, there are more services, they're more reliable, they run much closer together. And this is all about new technology. Similarly, I think we can all remember, well, perhaps certainly my generation, when you'd be on a train and the train would break down and then, another train would have to come along or you get off onto a bus. The reliability is hugely increased of the actual rolling stock. And of course, let's not lose fact that there's been a huge investment in stations. There's still a lot of stations that need to be upgraded, but if we look at our flagship stations, Birmingham New Street, what's been done across some of the Scottish stations, Waverley and Glasgow, but of course then the London stations, and HS2 will build a new Euston station on top of what we see at St Pancras and of course King's Cross.
Now, last year, Boris Johnson visited the new production facility in Goole. Are you reliant to any degree on government investment? Because obviously, a railway is a huge outlay of cash for anyone, whether it's a government or a business.
The government are the facilitators of new rolling stock, and certainly DfT play a really important part in making sure that rolling stock can be purchased. But all the trades in the UK are actually privately owned. So there is a body of investors that like to invest in railways because the return is medium term to long term. And it's a known quantum, so to speak, about actually running a train and how much it will cost with the reliability that companies like my own will pick up and we will pay penalties associated with that. So, the investment that we see for High Speed 2 at the moment, yes, it's government funded. And that's because, building something in multiple billions of pounds has to be led by the government. It's a huge infrastructure project. The land purchase is just the first part, but, building it and then actually getting all the systems up and running. And the rolling stock is a part of that, a very significant part of that. But I don't see that government is really going to take all the trains onto their balance sheet that we see in the UK at the moment.
Are we a bit late in the UK getting to the party? Elsewhere in the world, high-speed railways have been a feature of modern life for years and years, and only now are we really sort of investing in high-speed too in the UK. Should we have done it years ago?
Good question. What we chose to do was actually not take up huge amounts of land because we don't have much spare land. We're a relatively well-populated island, and as we see from the distress that people have had that have been affected by the route for HS2, if we'd had multiple lines going alongside our existing lines, it could have been tenfold in terms of disruption. So over the last years, we've concentrated in two areas. I mean, the first is about the capacity on the existing railways and perhaps widening them. And the West Coast Main Line between London and Glasgow with the spur off to Edinburgh is a prime example of how that worked really efficiently. It was a huge investment, but it meant that we could double the capacity on the West Coast. And another one is, the much aligned electrification down to South Wales, where, of course, then we can have new efficient trains, which are green, running on a railway that was built by Brunel.
That's interesting. I wanted to talk about your green technologies. How much are you still investing in adapting and adopting environmentally friendly technologies?
Just about everything that we supply in Siemens Mobility for the transport sector is with a green credential. If you take our trains, we as Siemens no longer actually manufacture diesel locomotives in any shape or form, with the exception of some specific freight locomotives which are electric with a diesel engine in them, so when the electrification stops they can still continue on their journey. So we concentrate on electric multiple units, as we call them, EMUs, but electric trains. And what we've been doing more recently is looking at actually where there is no electrification, where there are no wires over the railway, what can we do? And so we are one of the leaders with battery technology. We know about batteries for cars, but of course, when you have a multiple ton train, putting a battery on it is a slightly different challenge. And we've successfully done that, and we have them in revenue service in Europe. The other thing, of course, that we're looking at really closely is hydrogen, how that can be applied to trains. And we have a really good working solution for that, which is coming to market at some time over the next 2 to 3 years. But combine that actually with the carbon footprint of building things. We often forget about, how much carbon the creation and actually the curing of concrete, for instance, takes. Getting more trains over the same amount of infrastructure. I'll use a little example. There's a tunnel in the centre of London, which is on the Thameslink bit of railway. There was always a business case, everyone said, to build a second tunnel under the Thames at a cost of about, I don't know, probably by today's terms, 20 billion. What we did is we actually took signaling technologies and took it so it's an automated railway so that we could actually have the trains far closer together, therefore doubling the capacity, effectively going from 14 trains per hour up to 24 trains per hour, with the criteria that you could increase up to 28 trains an hour, which has meant you haven't had to build either a new bridge or a new tunnel. And we did that whilst keeping that railway open all the way through. So it's working on multiple different levels to make sure that, we have the best carbon reduction